Thank you for joining our Wednesday evening Bible study. Please stay tuned for some important announcements immediately following the service.
I want to talk to you in this season where we're, as a church, we're growing, we're bringing new people in. But if you don't get connected, we will have 200 people join this year, and next year we'll have the same amount of members. Because they fall off when they're not connected. Jesus said in John 15th chapter, verse 5, I want to help you get connected today. John the 15th chapter, verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me ye can do nothing. I want to talk about helping you get connected. You may be seated.
All right, preacher.
I like this book of John because the book of John is written from the theological perspective that Jesus is both the Son of God and God himself. It begins with this idea of Logos, and the Word was made flesh, Jesus. And in the book of John, John uses this biblical idea of completion, 7 I ams. The last one, Jesus says, I am the true vine. And Jesus is sharing with us, and from my own experience of about to be and as I wondered I wanted to share this about being connected, and you look for things to talk about. I said I had this experience, and I told my friend Toronto Spites, and I said, how do you share that with the church? He said, well, you can blame it on your wife. And then, no, T didn't say that, T didn't. Jesus says, I am the vine. Now, here is what I discovered, y'all, when it was about to be cold. The gas is disconnected. And we said, let me talk to somebody above you, whoever we got to talk to. She said, well, when your bill comes, it's going to be high. It's going to be high. It dawned on me that every connection has a price.
All right. Yes, it does.
And just because you haven't been paying it doesn't mean it hasn't been getting paid.
All right.
It looked like he wanted to shout right through there, and I rushed by it. The reality is, somebody listening to me today, most of your life you have been the beneficiary of what somebody else has done. We have been blessed by the benevolence of others, and God offers us, Jesus has this idea in mind that I want you to connect to me, but the price that it costs, you couldn't pay.
All right.
We were trying to get to God, but we were too dirty. God reaching for us, but he was too holy. So God wrapped his holiness in our humanity in Jesus, and Jesus the vine reaches up, touches God's hand, reaches down and grabs ours so that we can be connected. The reality is, he reminds us that he has paid the price for us to be connected, and God offers to you an opportunity to be used in the kingdom, and all you got to do is connect. The mistake we often make is we often confuse cost with value or worth. And based on what stuff costs you, you have a tendency to mistreat it. I don't need everybody, but I just need some parents who gave some nice stuff to their children. I ain't talking about my house, I'm talking about other people. And they don't treat it right because they never had to work for it or pay for it. And they don't understand the worth of it until they try to replace it. And a lot of times, because God has been so gracious to us, we take advantage of his kindness and think just because salvation is cheap, that grace is, because salvation is free, that grace is cheap. Salvation is free to you, but it costs God everything. If we're going to get connected, we got to understand that there's some things God has been doing for us. There's some doors God has kept open for us. There's some ways that God has made for us. I don't need everybody, but somebody ought to get excited that there's some stuff you got you didn't have to pay for, but it did cost. There's an industrialist in the 19th century whose wife would travel. He was an extremely wealthy man. His wife had traveled to Europe, and as she would try, she would go on these long and exorbitant shopping sprees. She found a diamond that she liked, and she telegraphed her husband and sent him the price of the diamond. When he telegraphed back, he sent the reply, no, comma, price too high. He said, you can't have it because the price is too high. When she received the telegraph, the comma was omitted, and it said, no price too high. Can I suggest to you that God sent us a message at Calvary? And I want it to be clear that he says, whatever it takes, no price is too high. That Jesus does not pay for most of it. Jesus does not pay for a lot of it, but Jesus paid it all. But not only does every connection have a price, but every connection has a purpose. Yeah. You got to make sure that the connection has a purpose. Y'all, it was cold in that house. I ain't talking about play cold. It was about to be and we needed water, and we were determined to do whatever it took to get that water on, get the gas so the water could be up. Now listen to this. It's interesting that Jesus says something in this text. He says we are to bear fruit. More fruit. There's some people who think that you join church and your purpose is to come here and to just worship God. You are here to worship God, but God expects more out of you than that. Okay. The Bible refers to us as a vineyard. What does not produce fruit is only good for wood. And if God wanted wood, he'd have planted a tree. So that the purpose of a vineyard is to produce fruit. And we must ask ourselves, I'm a member of this church. I come here every Sunday. I get dressed up. I pull up in here and I see all my friends, but where is my fruit? Who has my relationship with Christ benefited other than me? Oh, I'm preaching. Somebody gonna slip up and get happy with me talking about that the life ought to be fruitful, that my life has been, God has created me to make me productive. Now, don't miss this in the text. He says two things. He says that if we don't bear fruit, that those who don't bear fruit, he destroys. But watch what he says. He says, if you bear fruit, he prunes. Now, don't miss this. What God says, you would think that if we bared fruit, that God would pamper us. You say, now, God, I'm bearing fruit. Treat me nice. But this word, prune, this word literally means to cut away. Sometimes we think that God is angry at us because we have done something bad and God is punishing us. But God says, I like your fruit, but I want more fruit. And what God understands is if he does not prune us, if he does not clean us, trees that don't get pruned become top heavy. And you're going through and you think God is mad at you, and God is saying, no, I want more fruit. You are convinced that you just got leaves to show off, but I want you to produce some fruit. And so what God does is he develops us to be productive. You have been called to produce fruit. Now, somebody's going to listen to me today and say, whoo, Pastor, I'm ready. I'm going to join about 18 ministries today. No, I'll join them next week, and then the next week. I was reading an article last week about a group in South America, a tribe of people, who had people, their lifespan and the expectancy of life was so short. It's around like their mid-30s, 40s. They did studies, and they discovered that in the adobe that they used to make their homes, there was an insect. And this insect carried a disease, so they had some choices. They could burn the buildings down, wipe them down. They could bring an insecticide in, or they could move to a place where there were no insects. 3 years later, they went back to this tribe. And you know what the people were doing? The same thing they had been doing from years earlier, with the same life expectancy. How many of us find ourselves in ruts, and we stay in them so long that we look up one day and realize that the only difference between our rut and our grave is the length? Our situations remain unchanged because we don't understand that we have been created to be productive. And God he says this word, that if you abide in me, your connection to me is what enables you to do ministry. How many times do we think, I'm not as smart as so-and-so and so? I can't sing like so-and-so. I can't teach like so-and-so. I'm new to church. I just got here. I don't know what to do. God doesn't need your ability. He needs your availability. And if you're willing to connect with him, God can do through you. Because don't ever let us think that God has to have us. There's some little boy right now playing Xbox who's going to preach me under the table. It doesn't matter how good your voice is. There's somebody right now who's never sang a note. There's somebody on some corner right now who's fighting a crack addiction, who God's going to bring in here and can sing the walls down. God doesn't need your ability. He just needs your availability. And if you make yourselves useful, God will use you. But you got, your connection will have a price. Your connection will have a purpose, but you got to make the proper connection, right? So do you know how many utilities you got? I mean, you got to have cable. You got to have electricity. Somebody works on the yard. Somebody does your security system. Now, I could have called Spectrum and say, hey, my gas is off. Come on, talk to me now. Connections are only beneficial if they meet the need. And I told you, all it takes is just a small seasonal shift, and your insufficiencies will be edified. The weather was going to change, and we realized how much we needed gas. And can I suggest to you that one of our challenges in life is too many of us are too busy connected to the wrong thing, because the mistake we make is we try to treat symptoms. We didn't understand. I'm there unplugging the hot water heater because it's got to be the hot water heater. It's beeping. We're there trying to figure out what's wrong with the faucet because the water isn't getting hot. We were trying to understand what's going on with the stove, but they were symptoms. The problem was I wasn't connected to the gas. Now, I don't know who I'm talking to here. Jesus says you need to connect to me. I'm the true source. You've been looking for that connection in relationships. That's not it. You've been looking for that relationship, for that connection on your job to find significance. That's not it. It's not in the fraternity. It's not in the sorority. It's not in the business that you have. Only Jesus can make that connection for us. You keep saying I'm lonely, but that's just a symptom. You keep saying, I have no real self-worth. That's just a symptom. You keep saying, I'm battling with this depression. That's a symptom. You got to go to the source. And when you connect to the source, I don't need everybody, but I wish I had somebody up in here who can testify that a connection with Jesus makes the difference. He doesn't stop dark days, but he stands with you so you're able to go through them. He doesn't stop the wind all the time, but he will be a shelter. He allows us to go through sickness, but we go through it understanding that it's going to be all right. Is there anybody here who can say, I know what it's like to have the connection? Even in the face of sickness, I got a feeling everything gonna be all right. So what do we do? What do we do? See, you got to have the right connection, because if your connection isn't proper, it won't meet the need. I don't need everybody, because y'all gonna be hating on me when I start bragging about my mechanical prowess, right? So y'all know I can fix a car. But I'm at the airport, and there's a man who is working on his car, and the lady in the car, and they got the hood up and they're working. And I said, baby, let's see if we can help him. We dropped off the baby, and I got out, and they trying to jumpstart the car, well, for another car, but they couldn't. And I said, well, let me see. And I had seen somebody do this before. And I had a Coke in the car. This is true. I had a Coke in the car, and I poured the Coke on the terminals. Then I took a towel and wiped. I said, here, let's try it. Hooked it up to my car, and it started. Because the terminals were dirty, they couldn't get a connection to make a charge. And sometimes you try to jumpstart cars off another car, but the battery in that car ain't big enough. You need to connect somebody who can handle dirty terminals and has a big enough charge to get that. Somebody should have waved at me right through there. I don't need everybody, but I wish somebody in here would know that the God we have has enough power to jumpstart a broken life. He put back together a broken heart. He can bind back together a broken home. Well, let me give you this final word. Jesus says this word, and I like it. He says, if you abide in me, that your connection has a price. Your connection has a purpose. It must be proper, but it needs to be perpetual. You need a permanent, watch what Jesus says. I like this. He said, if you abide in me. Jesus says that in order for this connection to be fruitful, it requires daily commitment. Jesus says, every day take up your cross. I wish I could tell you that being a Christian was so easy, that all you got to do is one day say, hey, it's good, and you got it down. But if the connection is worth having, it's worth going after with everything in you. You know what you do when somebody tells you that they can't turn on your gas, it's going to be 30-something degrees, and they can't turn it on for 3 days? You know, whatever it takes. Now, I'm going to tell y'all this, and it stays here in the family. Westside Worldwide, don't y'all tell nobody this. My wife is on the phone with a lady, and the lady said, I can't turn it on till Monday. Brenda say, oh, no, my husband is sick, and we have a baby in this house. Now, if you can identify with that, just y'all, come on now, don't play with me. And then looked at me and said, cry, D, cry, cry. When your connection is broken, you're willing to do whatever it takes to get it fixed. And all I'm trying to tell you is that you need a daily commitment to say to God, whatever it takes, I'm available. If you're going to be serious about being a part of this church, if you're going to be serious about producing fruit in your life, you need to get connected both to the Father and to a fellowship. You need to be a part of a church where you can grow. You need to be a part of a fellowship where you got somebody who comes to check on you. You need to be a part of a fellowship where somebody will hold you accountable. You need to be a part of a fellowship where you're connected to using the gifts that God has given you. Because the reality is God has given you gifts. And the reason God gave you gifts is so that the body would be better. God has given us gifts. And I don't know who I'm talking to, and I'm about to go to my seat now, but I need to tell you that you need to use what you have, because God gave you something he didn't give anybody else at Westside. There's something that God placed in you and sent you to this place to use your gift here. I don't care how anybody else sings. I don't care how they pray. I don't care how they teach. God gave you something, and he intended for you to use it for his glory. Let me tell you, when I got my hookup, when we got the connection back, everything that was messed up before came out all right. And I need to tell you that when you reconnect, here's what happened. The man said, I'm going to come by. You just wait on me. I'll be by. And when he connected, he fixed everything. I need to tell you that somebody here has been waiting. Somebody here has been tarrying. Somebody here came today and you feel like you're empty. Ooh, we out and slipped up and got happy right here. Somebody came today and it feels like you're about to run out. But is there anybody here who can say if you wait on him, he will show up? If you wait on him, he will show up. And whenever God shows up, he got to show out. Is there anybody here that knows when he shows up that he makes the cold places warm? Is there anybody here knows when he shows up he'll get your fire started? Is there anybody here that knows he will show up? Anybody here that know my Jesus? Ain't he all right? I said, ain't he all right? Ain't he? I know he's all right. Won't he show up in a courtroom? He'll show up in a sick room. He'll show up in a boardroom. He'll show up, and when he shows up, he'll make it all right. Will you help me lift up Jesus? Is he worthy? Is he worthy? Is he worthy? I know he's all right. You need to get connected. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Westside, here are our announcements for the week. WBC family and friends, It's Girl Scout cookie season, and our Girl Scout Troop 8422 will not disappoint. The delectable and tasty treats will be on sale in the foyer every Sunday after worship service beginning January 26th through February 23rd. The Westside Community Outreach Ministry, in conjunction with the Tarrant County Food Bank, will hold the monthly food distribution on Saturday, January 25th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. until all the food has been distributed. Volunteers are requested to arrive by 7 a.m. and remain until cleanup is completed. Calling all WBC greeters. The next meeting will be Sunday, January 26th, following 9:45 a.m. worship service in the Assembly Hall. Please mark your calendars and plan to attend. Westside will acknowledge and celebrate our own Dr. Delvin Atchison's 43rd preaching anniversary on Sunday, January 26th at the 9:45 a.m. worship service. Guest speaker will be Pastor Parrish Lowry of Greater Friendship Missionary Baptist Church of Fort Worth. There will be an important business meeting for Westside members only on Wednesday, January 29th at 7 p.m. We will be covering the 2024 fourth quarter and the 2025 proposed budget. Join us beginning February 8th at 11 a.m. for a weekend of celebrating Black History Month. Included in the celebration will be a documentary, arts and crafts exhibit, panel discussion of Westside's Black excellence, storytelling, and Negro spirituals. You will not want to miss this celebration. Also, each week of February, Westside is requesting the congregation to join in our celebration of Black History Month by wearing the following attire. On first Sunday, come dressed in your best church attire. Second Sunday will be generational colors. 0 through 19 years, wear red. 20 through 39 years will wear purple. 40 through 59 years, wear green. 60 through 79 years wear blue, and 80 plus years wear yellow. On third Sunday, come dressed in your Church in the Woods attire. And the fourth Sunday, wear your African attire. For additional information regarding any of these announcements and much more, please visit us at WBCCHURCH.org. Weekly announcements are also available on the Westside YouTube channel.